Alright, we are recording chapter 5 of The Phantom Menace, also the whole of the book. Um, by the way, it's been a few days. I've been sick and busy and not been able to do one of these for a bit. So I guess that lead up time that I didn't mean to give myself as much time as I did before these videos coming out. So looks like I'm going to be eating into that, and it's a good thing that I was there. Anyway, chapter 5 is not very involved, so I've only got two notes. One is kind of interesting, the first one. So I'll skip that one for the moment. The second is maybe they actually did go through the core, because I do remember the idea of going through the core of a planet is nonsense. For what they talk about, I think that's just what they call it when using, because it does actually say that the planet is like full of these caves with that the water goes through, so you can navigate through, and it can be a lot faster. Indeed, it can be, depending on how far you're trying to travel, which does kind of feed into the point that I know I was trying to make in the previous video, that why are they landing so far away from the Naboo cities that they're near the Gungans? And that then going through the core is faster. I mean, it makes no sense that that's where you'd put down your invading army. Okay, yeah, because it took a while to revive Jar Jar, and a good deal longer to complete their voyage through the core. Yeah, so it does actually kind of leave open the idea that they went through the core of the planet. No. I mean, like I said before, there's no way you would take a craft from water into the molten rock of the mantle. There's no way. There's no way at all. The interface between them I can't imagine much would survive that, even in a science fantasy universe like this. Yeah, no, it's just no. And there's also worth noting that the mantle is not just going to be very hot, the molten rock. It's also under tremendous pressure. It will crush any ships. It's actually kind of funny though when it talks about how the bongo got damaged and some water was actually leaking in. That reminded me, wasn't it about a year ago, from my perspective at least, from recording this, when that one submarine went down to see the Titanic and it got crushed? And it was like one of those things is that at that depth, the pressure is such that a single failure is catastrophic and just gone. Everything gone. So the idea here, and they're not necessarily as deep, to be fair, but it's like if you have a failure in the seal such that it's leaking in, the pressure will potentially crush the ship, especially if you're going down to the core. So, yeah. But to be fair, that I can understand people not recognizing that's a thing when writing a story. That's fine. Thinking that you can pilot through the core of a planet, that is something I think even elementary school or middle school level science would tell you, no, you're not doing. And that is kind of how I do think about some of this. It's like, did I learn enough in high school or middle school or elementary school to know this wouldn't work? If I did, then I will hold it against an author. But there can be more advanced topics where it's like, well, no, I get that. I get that. Okay, so the other thing, and this is the more interesting point, is we kind of get reintroduced to Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan in this. We spend some time talking about their two personalities and histories, and how Qui-Gon he's, I want to say experienced. I guess another way to put it would be mature. He will sit there and he will just think on things. He is not impatient. Obi-Wan, it does expressly describe as impatient. But something else about Qui-Gon is, a way to put it is, he is so at peace with, so comfortable with the Force, and that things have purpose. That for this primarily concerns Jar Jar at the moment. That basically the fact that they cross paths, Qui-Gon takes it as significant. Because it's like he's saved Jar Jar's life now multiple times. Twice when the droid arm was attacked, technically a third time because he broke his banishment, his exile, to bring them to the city. They were going to kill him for that. And Qui-Gon was like, no, we need Navigator, and argued that he owes me a life debt, so he has to come with me. So multiple times he's done this. And for some of that, Obi-Wan has been like, just leave him alone. I mean, there's no point there. He's not useful. And Qui-Gon is like, no, he's part of this journey. He's staying with us. Like, he has that level of comfort and trust and faith in the Force that if it is presented to him in this way, he's going to do it. And this is something that Obi-Wan really doesn't understand, but it's more than that. Because he's impatient, so he's like, Jar Jar isn't helping us in any way. I don't want him here. Okay, so it's like, that's impatience. But he also is talking down Jar Jar, which I do find more interesting. I'm not sure if I can actually find it there. Because he has like a resentment towards Jar Jar, and some of it might also be built up resentment at wrong chapter. Built up resentment at Qui-Gon. For doing this, but it's basically the point I'm trying to get to. I just want to see if I can find a specific line that helps show it. Obi-Wan is prejudiced against Jar Jar. He truly is. The Force is vast and pervasive, and all living things are part of it. It is not always apparent what the purpose is, however. Sometimes that purpose must be sensed in order that it might be revealed later. This is Qui-Gon trying to explain to Obi-Wan that, no, we're going to take him with us. He is part of the journey. So, yeah. And Obi-Wan's young face clouded. Some secrets are best left concealed, Master. Besides, why must you always be the one to do the uncovering? You know how the Council feels about this? About these detours. Perhaps just once the uncovering it should be left to someone else. And then Qui-Gon goes off about how, no, when you're the one at the detour, you're the one that should take it. When you're at the crossroads, you take the detour. When you're in the place of concealment, because the secret's there, you're the one that must uncover it. Don't leave it for somebody else. Okay. Yeah. Even if he risked himself... Okay. Yeah, so this is part of the description of Qui-Gon. Whenever he found a challenge that interested him, even if he risked him, he would basically take that on. I'm trying to sum up. The page breaks across things. The sentence breaks across the page. But basically, that whenever he comes across a challenge that interests him, he will take it on, even if it is a danger to himself. So it was here. Jar Jar Binks was a risk of the greatest magnitude, and there was no reason to think that embracing such a risk would reap even the smallest reward. So, this to me is more than this is prejudice, in my opinion, and this is from Obi-Wan's point of view. Yeah, one thing that gets annoying is it will talk about how the Jedi does this, the Jedi does that. It's like, there's two. Which one are we talking about? But this is definitely from Obi-Wan's perspective. And this isn't just a, why don't we free him? This isn't just a, he's annoying, he's not really helping us, why don't we just, at what point do we let him go? That, it's like, okay, you've been helpful, see ya. No, this is, and there's no reason to think that embracing such a risk would reap even the smallest reward. There's resentment there. So yes, I do describe this as prejudice, and I find that very interesting because Obi-Wan is supposed to be ready to become a Jedi Knight. Like, he's still Padawan, so still apprentice under Qui-Gon, and also mentions at one point, yeah, for more than a dozen years, they've been together. Qui-Gon being his mentor. And also, there's a little bit here that's a little odd, but just the practicalities of what it describes here. So it's like they've been together a dozen years or so. I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah. Why is it that Obi-Wan would still have this prejudice feeling? That's something that I find a little curious. Because you'd think the Jedi would teach that out of people. Especially when you also consider that they are supposed to have encountered a great number of species. So it seems also odd that it's like, you see this species, see this species, see this species. It's like, oh, yes, all that. Now you meet a Gungan. And it's like, oh, get rid of that one. It's like, it does seem odd. It does help show his own character flaws, and also can then show his character development, because we do know by the end of The Phantom Menace, Obi-Wan does take on Anakin as a Padawan just as Qui-Gon had intended to, but Qui-Gon died. So that whole him developing, but it still is that doesn't explain the prejudice. The impatience, that's fine, but this does ring to me as prejudice. And the one thing that just when looking back at this, how it talks about how Obi-Wan had been identified and claimed early in his life from his birth parents, so this setting that up for something for the whole no, Anakin's too old. He no longer remembered anything of them now. The Jedi Knights had become his family, and Qui-Gon was the closest. So one thing that I find curious about this, and by the way, this is, I consider that taking of the kids and teaching them actually one example of, because I think in one of the previous videos I had mentioned that even the Jedi Council, the Jedi Order, does have a threat of corruption through it in these books. I do actually consider that as one example, especially when you consider that what's part of their training? Lightsabers. Technically, they're doing child soldiers. Although, to be fair, it might be later on in the... Well, no, because in the movie, at least, I know we're not there yet, when they're visiting the Jedi Temple, you do see the kids working the lightsabers. I mean, it's very basic, but still is they're technically training child soldiers. But yeah, it is a little interesting. Just see that talked about there. Oh, yeah. Qui-Gon understood this attachment and shared it. Obi-Wan was a son he would never have. He was the future he would leave behind when he died. And this I find curious because Qui-Gon, being a master, you would think would have more than one apprentice. I can get the whole Obi-Wan is the closest to him, but it is also, I mean, if it is like this, then that's 1-to-1. So the Jedi Order doesn't grow. It would make more sense if he actually has multiple Padawans and it's just, okay, this is a very important mission. Obi-Wan, you're the oldest, you and I are going. But that there could be others that would just be younger that would also be under him. So as I said, it's just one of those practicalities that it's like, there should actually be multiple. Shouldn't there? I mean, it doesn't make sense that there would only be the one. Unless, well, I can understand the idea that, well, somebody like Yoda's a master of the Force, but also a master teacher. So him having multiple I can see that being no, that makes sense. But that Qui-Gon maybe isn't at that level, except I feel like his personality, for how they've described it in this chapter, he would be at that level. He would be always willing to take on new Padawans to train them up. And yeah, that's also true in the movie. When the in front of the council, and he's like, I'll take Anakin on to train. And they're like, you already have a Padawan. And I think it is in the movie, at least, Obi-Wan steps up and is like, well, I'm ready to take trials. I can do that right now. You're freeing him up. It's like, he should have multiple. Why does he only have one? It's very odd, very odd. So, yeah, we'll see. And that, to be fair, that's a technical criticism, that's a practicality, where it's just, this doesn't make sense. But at the moment, at least, I don't think that hurts the story. The prejudice aspect could, because if you don't have that alleviated, and to be fair, that's also me, how I'm reading it. I'm reading it and seeing Obi-Wan's prejudice here. Other people may read it and be like, no, he's just impatient, that's all. Or even no, it's not even that he's prejudiced against like Gungans or anything, it's just Jar Jar specifically annoys him. But it still just felt like that one line that I read about, that's not even the smallest reward we can get out of this. That feels very sharp, very pointed, that he is upset, that he has great resentment, not necessarily hatred, but resentment. And yeah, so it will be interesting to see how that goes forward. It also might be partly... This does make some sense, because the Naboo and the Gungans don't really get along, so there is prejudice going on there. It could be that they're going to have Obi-Wan serve as the surrogate for that, to show the prejudice there. Because I want to say, at least in the movie, because it's been too long since I read the book, it might... I want to say in the movie, the Queen is is very tolerant of Jar Jar, if tolerance is even the word. It's like, it doesn't even bother her that he's a Gungan. It's like, I've never met one before, and it's just a curiosity and still being very polite and respectful with her. With him. So it could be that Obi-Wan will serve as a surrogate for eventually developing away from that prejudice that technically the Naboo should have, but the Queen might not be an example of. We'll see. That will come up as we go. One thing I did notice as I accidentally was looking into, Chapter 6 actually has us back at Tatooine, which is a little curious. Because we haven't left Naboo yet, so it's like the whole chapters 1 and 2 are actually set on Tatooine before the events that we see the movie start with, so that'll be interesting. Alright. See you next time.